The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we'll review Austin's 1-0 victory over the Houston Dynamo. We will preview Saturday's LA Galaxy match, and we're also going to discuss, after 9 games in this 2024 season, what we know for sure about Austin FC and what we don't know for sure yet about Austin FC. We'll get into all of that as well as all of the other Austin FC news of the week. My name is Landon and Jeremiah. I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I don't know what kind of voice I have right now, but it's a huskier voice than normal. So hopefully I don't cough virtually on you during this show. But it was kind of a rough weekend, man. Except for the game, which was amazing. And I wanted to harken back to last week's show. You mentioned a podcast, which you didn't think anybody else listened to, but you got a fair amount of feedback about that in Los Verdes Slack, and about your not love of action movies too at the same time.
Yeah, I've mentioned podcasts I listened to on this show before. Some of them more popular than the one that I mentioned last week, and did not mention the one last week by name, but it's a movie podcast called Blank Check. And I think like 6 different people reached out, like saying like, "Oh, I didn't know you listened to Blank Check," just by the John McTiernan reference. And so there was one joke I wanted to highlight, which was Emma, who regularly sends in questions, and on the Blank Check podcast, they regularly make this joke that their competitive advantage as podcasters is that they are friends, and that no other podcast has that advantage. This joke being that
is silly.
Almost every podcast is started by 2 friends, and so the fact that you and I, Jeremiah, are hashtag the 2 friends is our competitive advantage in the podcasting landscape.
I love that, buddy. And so I also learned when I was just a minute ago when I was looking up John McTiernan that he went to federal prison. Did he mention that?
I just got to that
on the show.
The most recent. Anybody interested in listening to a movie podcast, the most recent episode is covering his film Rollerball, which was a remake of a movie from the 70s, which was by all accounts, a very bad movie. But also, John McTiernan was convinced that people were trying to sabotage it, and did some shady things in trying to prove that people were trying to sabotage it, and ended up going to federal prison because of it.
Wow, that's kind of disappointing. Well, in happier podcasting news, we also have a Patreon announcement to make tonight. We finally got the stuff in.
That's right. We've got all of the rewards are in my house now. Good news. They look great. I was nervous because we put in these orders and pay all of this money up front to get it all made, and then just hope that whoever's making it does a good job. But great news. They did. So I think we plugged this a couple of weeks back, but the $5 level reward is going to be referee cards. They look super cool. On one side, it's the Moon Tower Soccer logo. And on the back side, the yellow card says, "Thanks for nothing." The red card says, "See you never." They look great. And then the $10 level, you will get those referee cards, and you will also get custom Moon Tower Soccer socks. And they look great, Jeremiah. I haven't sent you a picture.
I haven't seen them yet. I'm excited to see them. Yeah.
I saw the mock-ups, but we have the mock-up photos posted on the Patreon page, so you can see those. It's a little easier to tell what the design looks like in the mock-up, but the socks in real life look great. And I said this last time, but I am a sock snob. I will not wear bad socks. These socks are good. High quality.
Awesome. Can't wait to see them. And as a reminder, you'll get it at whatever level you're at, regardless of whether you're a new or renewing member, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I know like NPR or some podcast networks, they'll only give rewards to upgrading members. I know that we don't do a ton of extra bonus content or anything like that. So we want to make sure that it's I want to say worth your money. That's not really, it's not a 1-for-1 exchange. The subscribing is because you like what we do, you think it's worth something, and you want to support us. And in return, we want to give a little something back. And so anybody who is subscribed at those levels as of a few weeks from now will get that tier of reward. And yeah, I mean, as far as like the value that you're getting, we've done this a few years in a row now where there's like blogs, and Patreon has kind of guides of like how much should these rewards cost for you to make like maximum money off of having a Patreon account. And we almost always go way over the the suggested amount, just because I don't know, we want it to be good. We want you to feel like you're getting something that you want and something that's valuable to you in return for this. And so we usually spend more money than we should on making sure we have really high quality merch that we're sending you guys. And but we're fine with that, just because you guys are great. You've been very, very helpful in supporting the show and keeping us going, and kind of just like giving us the extra motivation, both financially and emotionally, to keep doing this over some difficult years being Austin FC fans.
Yeah, not the case for this week, but there are definitely plenty of times last year, especially sort of coming down off that high of 2022, and it was a 2-loss week and things were kind of rough, and we didn't know what we were going to talk about because both games were sort of 1-0 messes, and that kept us going.
Identical 1-0 messes.
Yeah, and the other part of that is that we want to give you stuff that you value and like want to wear. And if you'd seen the list of the things that we've gone through and decided not to display, hopefully you would appreciate that. Like, we want it to be something interesting and cool and useful to you, and not just like the same old cheap swag you could get anywhere else.
Yeah. So check that out. We'll be talking a bit more about it. We also, we had a Swoon Tower tier last year. We're going to have some developments coming up on that here in the near future. We still need to work out some kinks there, but if you are already a member or join this week, and then once we make these changes in the near future, it's very easy to change what tier you're in through Patreon. So no worries on that, but we'll have more details coming soon on that.
Well, cool. Well, let's talk about this week. For the third time in 4 weeks, we have something exciting and positive to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, it was a victory. I don't know if everything about this game was positive, but
okay, I'm pretty medicated, so like just a good result to talk about.
Yeah, overall result absolutely positive. So Austin moves up to currently sitting in 8th place in the Western Conference. Fairly ugly 1-0 victory in Houston over the Dynamo, with Emiliano Rigoni scoring the winner, CJ Fodrey with the assist. Let's get into kind of the main storylines of this game. What do we got, Jeremiah?
Well, I think the number one storyline in this game is just possession and how differently this looked as looked from some Austin games in the past. And we actually, right before we started recording, went and looked this up. So Austin had 33% possession in this match, which is the lowest possession that Austin has had in the 3+ year history of the team. So definitely an outlier of a match in those kinds of terms.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I think looking at like why that happened and how that happened, I think partially it's just like Houston has done that. I think Houston is one of the highest possession teams in the league this year. And so again, we talked a few weeks back about like bunkering versus getting pinned down. I think this is a little bit of one of like letting Houston have the ball in certain parts of the game, but a lot of it was just Houston's really good at keeping the ball. They look really good in the first 2 thirds of the field. Where they've struggled is in the final third. They have fewer goals scored than Austin does on the season, even though their spot in the table has been higher throughout the whole season. So this is just a game that like Houston has played many times and over has been able to eke it out and get the result. And this week the luck didn't break their way, and then it did break Austin's way. So I think that really was the difference. I think Austin deserves some credit for staying in the game, especially late on. If you look at the way they set up defensively, it was kind of like a 4-2-3-1 defensive shape, with Rubio really the only one pressing super high. And then Driussi would follow a center back there, but it was often dropping in and kind of man marking Carrasquilla or Artur, whoever was the deepest guy there. And then the 2 wingers were tucked in pretty narrow, and they're kind of trying to get them to play a little wider. And then as you see when when Rigoni and Fodrey come on in the 70th, 71st minute around there, they change to a 4-4-2 defensive shape, and they start sitting a little deeper. They're not pressing as much anymore, sitting back, like absorbing pressure. And then that line of four was also very narrow. And so they were trying to not let Houston play through the middle. And I think for the most part, that worked. And if you look at Houston's shots, they ended up with, was it?
I think it's 17 total.
17 total shots. They did not have a shot after the 72nd minute. And so, or they had one shot after the 72nd minute. I think it was like in the 85th minute. But once Austin kind of clamped it down, it was a pretty impressive, like gritty defensive performance, which I think I was too tense watching the game in the moment. But on the rewatch, they actually did a pretty good job. And like, I think on the first watch, I was quite critical of their defending and still am for the first 70 minutes. But I thought the last 20 or so minutes, they did a pretty good job for doing what they were trying to do.
And can you talk about the effect of the personnel? So Julio's missing this game because of the suspension for 5 yellow cards. So then Austin rolls with Hedges and Hines-Ike. Does that make a difference in terms of possession? Like, obviously, neither one of those guys are particularly skilled, I think, in the attack, or definitely not in the way that Julio was.
I mean, it might have made some difference. I think Hines-Ike, he's not as good with the ball at his feet as far as like passing and distribution, but he's able to carry a ball through a line every once in a while, which I think does help in the attack some. And then also just his athleticism allows him to be able to step a little higher because he's got the pace to actually recover in those moments as well. So it might have made a little bit of difference, but overall, I thought the two center backs had a pretty good showing. And that's one of my positive takeaways from this game is like, this is the deepest our center back pool has ever been. And you could throw any of the
Leo Väisänen too at some point coming back to make it even deeper.
Yeah, to have like before the season started and for most of last season, we would have said like a healthy Väisänen is our number one center back. And at this point, I'm like, Väisänen is first or even second guy off the bench. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds amazing.
That does. Now, there were still a couple nervy moments. Brad Stuver came up big when it counts. Ended up with six saves, made MLS team of the match day again. One thing I thought was, they noted this in the broadcast too, that was kind of interesting, is like at least a couple of the big ones were reaction saves, and there were ones where he didn't get the ball. He didn't get his hands completely on the ball. It wasn't a catch, but he always managed to like parry the ball or punch the ball away from danger so that there wasn't that chance for that rebound and second shot on open net. So I thought he had a really strong performance again. I think had the highest FOTMOP score, if that matters, out of anything of anybody. But it's good to see him have that performance on the road.
Yeah, again, and he's had a few shaky moments this year as well, where he's spilled balls in dangerous areas, and I thought, yeah, overall, like a really solid performance from him, and then also being a bit more ready to play the ball long when Houston was pressing up high. And I thought the last couple of games, his distribution has been quite good, and being able to like actually pick out guys wide and things like that, and in moments in the past where he's had some rough games. So hopefully that trend can continue.
Well, I feel like Houston wasn't pressing quite as high as St. Louis, right? I feel like there was, I don't remember him seeing those, like him dribbling the ball around the back and terrifying me 1v1 against like the number 9, like he does against St. Louis seemingly every time. So that
he did once. There was a little split pass to Danny Pereira in the box with like two guys coming at him pretty hard, and he slips a little reverse pass to Danny Pereira, who's like 3 feet away from a defender or something like that. So that was the most nervy moment. But for the most part, as less so with him being pressured, when our back line was trying to play out of the back, and as they realized, like, okay, this isn't going to work, Stuver was often there, like would float wide, ready to receive, and as soon as he receives, he would launch it long. And so I'm completely fine with that. And I think a thing like that Stuver's a little bit underrated at is his positioning like away from the goal in those moments, like making himself available for a pass, coming off his line and winning a ball as kind of a sweeper keeper sometimes. I think he's gotten into some tricky scenarios for that, but he also was able to claim a few balls last night because he was quick to come off his line, and a ball that would have gone out for a corner would have been a defender with their back to the line with pressure on him, and he comes off quickly and is able to get there and capture it.
Yeah, and when we get into the goals, when we get to the goal, the one, I think we can talk about his playing the ball too, because that was a factor in it. But I think the third biggest note that we have to talk about is the subs making a difference, particularly one guy that people thought they might not ever want to see play again, Emiliano Rigoni, and one guy that people have been begging for, CJ Fodrey, both come on and both make a difference pretty quickly in their appearance.
Yeah, like they came on 71st minute or so. Rigoni had some bright moments, some still pretty frustrating moments for me as well. There's one moment where I think Rubio or somebody has the ball wide on the right side, and there's space for an overlap, and Rigoni is coming up that sideline, and he's just kind of like jogging up the sideline into his spot, and they switch it and go the other way. And that was a little frustrating to me, but he has a couple of good moments, and then he scores the goal. And then after that, he has some moments where he looks like a pretty good soccer player. And I think he's one of those guys that just like, he's a confidence player. He needs to feel good about the way he's playing in order to play well. I'm not saying this is gonna happen. I don't expect it to happen. I think it probably won't happen.
Don't put Landon. Don't put this on us. I mean, go ahead. What are you gonna say? Finish your thought.
That, like, maybe if he does get a little bit of confidence, he could be a somewhat useful player for the rest of this season. Like, I have zero hope of him ever being worthy of a designated player spot and all the money that they're paying him. But if he can just be like, and I'm still not saying if they can or are willing to buy him out, I think they should. But if they're not going to do that, if he can just be a serviceable player for the rest of this season, that will be more than what we've gotten from him this season so far. So, and then maybe even if he does do that, maybe that we can find a place to move him. Maybe his stock will rise and someone else will want him.
Yeah, maybe. And I think we'll find out pretty soon, because Austin has 6 games in the month of May, including several multi-game weeks. So like Austin's going to need production out of him and out of CJ too, in order to just sort of stay above water.
I think CJ's got a good opportunity here with all those games, not knowing how long Owen's going to be out either. That opens up more time on the wing. But in this game, I thought CJ had some bright moments. I think there's still a couple of moments, and I've said this. I don't remember if I've said this on air before, but I've said it at Austin FC 2 games, where CJ will often receive the ball wide and rely almost exclusively on his athleticism to beat MLS Next Pro defenders. And most of the time it works, just because he is a much better athlete than those guys. There's a couple of times he receives it wide. He tries to take Griffin Dorsey to the line, and he does beat him for speed. But once he gets to the line, Dorsey wrecks him and bowls him over the ad board, and then does it to Tate Schmidt once he gets subbed on. And Schmidt just stands him up, and then he gives up the ball. And so Fodrey just tackles him, like wraps him up and holds him, just so they don't counter on us the other way. And so I think in those moments, those are the spaces where he needs to grow. But where he shined was like he just getting involved, using his athleticism to just buzz around and get involved. And then where that assist comes from is a long goal kick from Brad Stuver. CJ goes up and wins it, heads it back to like just kind of flicks it on, and Rigoni is running onto it. Just like a minute, 2 minutes before that, they did the exact same thing. And Fodrey steps up and wins that ball, and nobody's making the run. And him and Zardes are both kind of going up for the ball. And so they try that once. The next goal kick comes. CJ's going up for it. Zardes recognizes he's going up for it. So he loops back around and starts running forward. Rigoni is also making that run this time. And so, like, It's. I think there's still some growth for CJ to do. He's going to have some ups and downs just because he's a young player and he's not played at this level before. But I think he's a useful addition to the bench just based on athleticism alone. Like who else is winning that ball 2 times in a row on this team?
Yeah, nobody. And that's one of the things I like about him. And it's one of the things I've enjoyed about Obrion, but his is speed, but just somebody that brings something different to the attack.
Yeah.
Either playing, most of the game or being able to come in as a sub and just bring a separate dimension. And it felt like for so long, Austin had just a bunch of interchangeable pieces. It's good to have like at least a couple guys who can make a difference in their own way. Obviously, it's not all, if it was always positive, they'd be like starting 11 players in MLS all the time, but like they just bring a dimension to their game that not a lot of players have.
Yeah, I hope that's the approach that we see from Josh Wolf in these next few games is, I mean, for rotational purposes anyway, we'll get into this later on, but we have a lot of games coming up in the month of May. But taking kind of the horses for courses approach where, okay, this is how we're going to play. We think we're going to have to defend deep, play in some transition. Maybe throw CJ on for, if not a start, maybe play him for the last 30 or something in a game like that. If it's a game where we think we're going to have more of the ball and be in the attacking half, maybe that's a game for Owen to play. Like having those options is good. And I mean, I'm not going to say we're spoiled for options because I still don't think any of these options are great or ideal options. But having different, like you said, like different kinds of pieces to play with and put on is a good thing. And it's not like we're dropping anybody off the bench for him. Like we had 2 open bench spots against Houston the other day. And so we can, even whenever we have some injured players come back, we can afford to put him on the bench.
Yeah, totally. Were you ready to take a break and then get into the details of the game?
Yeah, let's do it.
When no one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balance. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden, serving New York-style pizza and authentic Italian. Now open in Round Rock in front of Del Diamond and on Anderson Lane near Shoal Creek Boulevard.
The Anderson Lane Beer Garden is just 2 miles from Q2 Stadium. Stop by for a pizza and a pint before all this year's home games. They play all Austin FC games with sound on.
All right, let's talk about some promos. We've talked about the beers, 30 beers on tap, Brewery of the Month High Sign, and there's Seamus the Fiddler Irish Red and Violet the Blueberry Blonde. The pizza of the month is the Little Italy, fresh mozzarella, olive oil, salami, capicola, cherry tomato, ricotta, hot honey, and basil. And then also, if you want to go during the week, there's 2 for Tuesdays, where you can get 2 pizzas for the price of 1 every Tuesday, and perfect pitcher perfect Thursday. Half-price pitchers of beer every Thursday.
You can dine in or pick up for lunch or dinner at Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden. Check them out online at tonycsbeergarden.com. All right, we're back. Jeremiah, before we get into, I guess we don't have that many events during the game to talk about.
No, we all have plenty of time.
What was the narrative coming into this game?
Yeah, I think after the loss in St. Louis, that was Austin didn't look great. There's a question about whether Austin could bounce back. Remember, at this point, 1 week ago, Houston was on a hot streak, sitting 3rd in the West, and then we got this really depressing infographic that I think John Space Muller put together for the Athletic that showed sort of whether teams had gotten better or worse, and Austin was firmly in the bad attack, bad defense quadrant of how they were playing so far this year. So not a lot of reasons for excitement.
It's one of these things where it's like, I don't think I learned anything about Austin from looking at this graphic. If you said, is Austin good at attack? I would say, no, they're bad at attack. Are they good at defense? No, they're bad at defense. But to see them pretty much like outstandingly the worst at both of those as far as these metrics are concerned, it's still stinks.
That's the problem. Yeah. Yeah, it's a relative part of it. Then when we get in the LA preview, maybe when we talk about Austin's path to victory, the only team that was this worse on defense is LA Galaxy. So maybe that's a reason for hope when we talk about upcoming matches. So there was that. I got super annoyed by this Josh Wolf quote when I think it was Phil, maybe, or Oasis asked him where the goals would come from against Houston, and he replied simply, similar to the ways we have in the past. I took that to mean the ways that we have done it this year, which seemed kind of really obnoxious because Austin has not scored for any goals this year. After the game, I take it to believe, as we have in the past against Houston, which Austin has been very good at doing, and honestly, I'm kind of okay with.
I mean, I think you could be annoyed by either way, because he's on several occasions when people have asked questions about comparing this year to last year, he said, well, last year's last year. This is 2024. We're not thinking about that anymore. And so if he's hearkening back to the year before when it suits him and then ignoring all of that when it doesn't, like, that's also a little frustrating.
And I mean, it's pretty on brand. I think at this point, we know Josh Wolf is not great with the media, and it's just we have to lower our expectations and maybe be disappointed in that. Anyhow, and then we had injuries. So no Julio because of yellow card accumulation. Leo Feisman was back in training but not ready to go. And then I think it was surprise news we didn't see this until the injury report came out, right? That Owen was not going to play.
Yeah,
I think it was covered. Wasn't covered in the press conference.
Yeah, I think it must have been Thursday or Friday when this came out, but Owen Wolf out with an ankle injury. I'm guessing it must have happened in training because I didn't notice anything during last week's game or anything. So not sure what his situation is or when he'll be back, but did not suit up for this one.
Then we get the lineup out. I mean, it's, I think, the to be expected 11. Really no surprises here. Stuver, Buter, and Gallagher wide. Heinzak and Hedges at center back. Ring Pereira and Driussi in the midfield, and Obrian, Rubio, and Finley on the wing. Maybe the only question would be, would you see Finley or Rigoni on the wing? But not surprising at all, given how much each has played lately. That's the lineup that we got.
Yeah, not surprised there at all. So the start of this game, I mean, relatively speaking, I think we have to caveat that here with any Austin FC game, but compared to a lot of Austin's games, especially the away games, I feel like Austin started the game fairly decently, and like most of the first half was decent. They had some stretches of possession. They seemed to be playing a bit more their own style. Like they didn't, I think they still lost the possession battle pretty broadly in the first half, but they had the ball in the attacking third, got a few shots away. I think they had didn't they have like 5 shots in the first half and then got only 2 in the second half?
Yes, that's right. 5 shots in the first half.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not that good, but it's
comparatively.
Yeah. I think if I'm remembering this stat correctly, I think in the previous 3 away games, they had 7 shots total and they got 7 shots in this game. So again, 7 shots is still quite bad, but it's much better than they've been doing. So we'll call it progress.
Yeah. To your point on possession the first half was 62-38. Possession the second half was 74-26. So
just that
relatively speaking,
our 4th worst game ever in possession.
Yeah.
All right, getting into game events, there was again a few decent moments early on. Obrian gets out into space. I think it was the 22nd minute and plays a ball across the box. Alex Ring finds it. He hits it right at Steve Clark. In his defense, it was a congested box to his right side. I think the only option he had was to play it back across goal. So it was going to be a difficult finish, but he hit Steve Clark right in the chest with it, essentially. Clark punches it up, but then is able to recover it afterwards. Were there any other big Austin chances in that half? I feel like there's a few other like little half chances, but nothing too dangerous.
No, there's a couple. Not Rigoni. Driussi had a couple shots. He had a header. There was a decent issue. And I remember one other. I don't remember what the other shot was. Rubio had like a header that was an okay attempt off a set piece, but nothing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I remember Rubio getting one. It was in a dangerous position, but it was like it was moving really quickly and in a kind of an awkward moment. So he was able to get his head on it, but it didn't go anywhere near goal. But yeah, I mean, encouraging that they were able to keep it in the half and like get into the final third a few times, which is again more than they've done in a few of these away games. Houston has a stretch late in the first half where they have quite a few, or at least like 2 or 3 pretty dangerous moments in a row. And this is where talking about earlier about being frustrated by Austin's defending, whenever they get pinned back, it just seems like they can't get out of it. There's not any strong ball winners on the team that aren't like, I'd say like maybe our center backs are, but once it gets to them, it's too late. And if nobody else is going to win a ball, nobody else is going to step in and win a tackle or break up their possession. It just goes and goes and goes. And then once we do win the ball, we're not very good at playing out in transition. And so there's a few moments where Gallagher recovers the ball wide and plays it to Ring, and he's not able to turn out a pressure and play, or we're just not able to get out. And I get super nervous whenever they get into these positions because they've shown that once they get pinned back, they have a tendency to just stay there and not be able to escape it ever.
Yeah, so the end of this half, I think Griffin Dorsey has a shot at 44, and then there's 3 shots in that first half added time from Houston. So Houston gets 4 off in a row there in pretty quick succession.
Yeah,
right at the end of it.
Biggest one from Aliyu.
Latif. Oh, Aliyu. Yeah.
Well, it was followed by the
one?
Latif Blessing one.
Okay.
So
yeah.
It was Kowalczyk plays a little diagonal ball across the box, and it falls to Aliyu, who volleys it out of the air, pretty much unmarked. And Gallagher was there, but he had, to his defense, he had 3 players on that back post, and so he was playing like marking the ones closer to goal. As the ball goes over his head, he closes down, but Aliyu's able to volley it with pretty much no contestation there. Stuver, a good reaction save. Like it was hit right at his shoulder, and you said reaction save earlier. This is exactly what this was, where he isn't able to like actually get his hands up and actually do anything with it, but just to actually get a hand on it keeps it out of the goal probably, because if that clips his shoulder, it was hit hard enough that it might still just go in. And so he does well to punch that out of the way. It falls to Blessing in the box there, who shoots from like 6 yards, but Heinzike is there and is able to step in and deflect that one. So I think that was like the highest XG chance they had, but the most dangerous one I think was the one that came.
The one before. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, go to the half. 0-0. Not a lot of action in the first part of the second half. Then we kind of talked about this when the subs come on, like it wasn't. Well, I mean, I guess you said defensively that was a sort of an immediate effect, but offensively, Austin became no more threatening.
Yeah, and I think
when they're in,
one thing that changed the game a lot was about 10 minutes before Austin made those subs, around the 60-minute mark, Hector Herrera comes on, and so he's been injured the whole season. Sebastian Ferreira has also been injured. He comes on later. He doesn't have a ton to do, I think, partially because Austin goes into lockdown mode and does a pretty good job. They're not getting many balls into his area, but Hector Herrera comes on, and those first 10 minutes he's on, he is having a big effect on the game. And he gets a really nice shot on goal, but then he's also just a great distributor, great progressor of the ball, and puts Austin under quite a bit of pressure until those next subs come on and they change that defensive shape a little bit. But yeah, only like I said, 2 goals. Or sorry,
2 shots.
2
shots. Yeah.
And so I guess, should we go on to the goal? Is there anything else to talk about?
I don't think there's anything else to talk about. There's one Biro shot that is this .002 XG. It was the other shot. So let's talk about the goal.
Yeah. So we mentioned in the first segment that CJ Fodrey wins that ball 2 times in a row off of a goal kick. The second time he actually has runners on the far end. I mean, I want to give credit to Emiliano Rigoni. Like it was a really well taken goal, really well played all the way through. The first time I watched it, I thought maybe he got a little bit lucky in this, but on the replay, having seen CJ win that ball before, he then makes the run exactly where CJ was able to flick it onto. And so he runs into that space. The ball is bouncing and he takes a touch on his thigh. And again, on first watch, I thought maybe it was a lucky touch, but on the replay, it looks very intentional. Like oftentimes when the ball is bouncing like that, you just get a body part on it and try to like knock it down a little bit so you can start playing it with your feet. And he touches it off his thigh in between the two defenders and touches it just forward enough so that he can sprint and shoot that gap between the two defenders, gets into space, takes the shot from a pretty difficult angle at speed. He has to hit it right then or he's not getting another chance, and takes it really, really well. Like the whole thing was just really well executed by him.
Yeah, it keeps it low. Keeps it, man. I thought for a second when it was rolling, it was gonna like hit the post and bounce off because it was from distance, right? Or
and he hit it with his left foot.
Further than it was. Yeah,
he hit it with his left foot, so it's curling away from that far post, but he keeps it in just enough that it pings off that post and goes in finally. But yeah, I was pretty nervous I'm sure it was less than half a second it was on the ground, but it felt like a lot longer than that.
Yeah, and I was safe from pretty far, but it was well within the 18. It just seemed like very far in the moment. And then the goal celebration was interesting because it was like he seemed relieved, and then he got a lot of love from the guys too. I think everybody was very just relieved and happy for him to sort of get this goal to go in to hopefully maybe create some momentum. It was a different kind of celebration.
Yeah, and then contrasting his celebration and Fodrey's celebration as well. They were quite different, but both of them getting a lot of love from their teammates for sure.
Yeah. And how is CJ both 19 and long-haired and balding at the same time? Are we going to cover that at any point, or is that like a Mike and Steph thing? But I feel like it was very obvious in this game when he was streaking down the field.
Yeah, I mean, after that, like Austin again clamps down, able to prevent any other attacks. Rigoni wins that last ball and just takes it to the corner and is able to see out the rest of the game. There was one moment at the end that I was annoyed by Driussi, where they take it to the corner, win a corner kick. They play in the next corner, and Driussi has two guys running at him. And I think he's trying to like play it off of those guys to play it back out of bounds. And it splits between them and goes to Steve Clark. And they play a counterattack in the dying seconds there. And I'm like, Driussi, what are you doing, dude? Just turn around and let them barrel into you. And either it's a foul or you get another throw in or corner or something. Like, don't be cute here. Just stay there. Hold the ball.
Yeah, and I think I again didn't think he had a great night overall. Like he early at least he was like taking the ball in super deep. He had a couple of attempts that weren't great. Just not what we've seen out of him for the last few weeks. But I guess you're going to be up and down throughout the season. But he's not his best performance for sure.
I don't think it was his worst one either, though. I think he had some useful moments for sure, and dropping deep to receive the ball. A lot of times I am annoyed when he does that. I think it's more so when we're in horseshoe of sadness mode and he drops in and takes the ball off of someone who's also not being defended. That's when I get annoyed. I thought a couple of times in this game he did that and was able to actually link play from the build up to the attacking third. And in that moment, I'm fine with it. Yeah, if you see space and are able to like switch play or like actually progress play forward, that's great. No problem with that. But then he also, like, I think he gives the ball away in midfield once pretty needlessly, and it ends up in a half chance for Houston going the other way. And then that moment at the end, a few like pretty like mindless mistakes from Austin throughout. I think Heinz Ike plays a ball directly out of bounds to nobody. Danny Pereira does that a couple of times where they're just not on the same page, and they're playing to a guy who's either running or not running and choosing the opposite trajectory to play the ball on. I think some of that can be chalked up to just we've not been able to play the same 11 a lot of games. Hopefully we can get into a streak where that's not true anymore. But yeah, it wasn't a pretty one. I don't know that we necessarily deserve 3 points, but we got them and we'll take them.
Yeah. So just the Copa Tejas standings. So there's only been 2 Copa Tejas games played so far. Austin, Houston, and Austin, Dallas. So Austin now sitting very clearly on top on 6 points and in good shape to continue. So the next Copa match will be Houston versus Dallas coming up this weekend. So this will be the first time that either one of them can get a result outside of Austin. And again, we won't know probably until the very end because this is weird, unbalanced schedule because of the number of games being played among the teams. So it'll be settled based upon points per game and not total overall points, which I think is the better system than the way they did it last year.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like we should maybe discuss a few individual players. I think there are some highlights here this week. Brendan Hines-Ike made several big plays. I think he makes one like last ditch lunging deflection. He blocks that Latif Blessing shot. Won some big headers in the box as well. This is the kind of like defending that we've just not seen a lot of. I think Matt Beasler did some of this in his half season that he played for Austin, where he was just had a knack for being in the right spot, winning the ball at the right moment. And in moments where like you could see the ball getting past him or whatever, and not necessarily blaming him for it because it was not an easy play to make, but he's making the not easy plays to make and doing that regularly. So I think that's a bright spot. Guilherme Biro is another one, I'll say. I think there's still quite a bit of space for him to grow and to kind of mature and learn the game plan tactically a bit more. But I think like looking at defensively, we'll start with defensively. Like he was probably given quite a few notes after the last couple of games as far as his positioning and like when to step and when to stay deep. It seems like he took those notes on and has improved in this game. And I think like his position, his relationship with the winger and who's supposed to be where when, I thought they did better this week. And then later on in the game, as Houston would, Griffin Dorsey's the right back. They would play him as a winger almost. And then Daniel Steres would stay a little bit deeper, similar to what Austin has done with Gallagher over the last couple of years. But that means there's extra pressure coming up that right side. But later in the game, especially after Austin scores, they're sending a lot of numbers forward. And Biro is one of the guys, like he's not just listening to orders. He's talking back and saying, like helping organize, saying like, this is what we need to do here. And I like to see that he's not just listening to Matt Hedges tell him what to do. He's participating and saying, okay, this is what we should do. We need to do, and like actually being part of that conversation. I think that's a bright sign. And then on the attack, I mean, it's because he's done this regularly enough that once he gets into the attacking third, he's not just a guy who can do a decent enough job for a defender. Like he is an asset in the attacking third as far as like movement and keeping the ball and just having good soccer instincts and knowing what to do and where to be and where to go. I'm hoping he can keep this progression. And if he can, he's going to be a pretty strong asset in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and then you mentioned his name, but Matt Hedges, I thought had a really good game too, considering that he's the guy that's getting older, hasn't played in a month. I don't think he's played more than, he hasn't started the game since March 23rd and haven't played more than 6 minutes since March 30th. So not knowing what you're going to get out of him, he turned in a really solid shift and did everything he needed to do too.
Who do you start at center back in the next game?
With Julio back?
Yeah.
Oh man. I think I would go back to Hines-Ike and Julio, even though Hedges had a strong outing.
Just for attacking reasons?
Yeah. Well, especially if we could get into this with LA, and maybe it's I think Austin's best chance against LA is to outscore them. And so if you're looking at the way you have to line up, I think Austin should line up as offensively as possible.
Yeah. I think there's I don't know if there's a right answer here, but yeah, that's one way to look at it. I think the other way to look at it is they've got some pretty dynamic players on the field and are pretty dangerous whenever they win the ball in the middle of the field and break in transition. And so I don't know if I want Julio Cascante in a game where that's going to be the case. So
You've seen Julio enough, like beaten in transition, running as fast as he can, but losing ground. Is that what you over the last couple of years?
yeah, but you're right. He does. He makes the offense better. So I don't. Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is.
Well, maybe let's take.
Any other individuals we need to cover? Or are we good?
I think we're good. I think we could go ahead and take another break, then we'll talk about LA and sort of the road ahead.
All right, sounds good.
Our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, who helps clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communication campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only advertises on this podcast because we are the leaders of the Copa Tejas standings at the moment. Does that mean, by that logic, if we go down?
No, yeah. Wait, we're still a two-time defending champion, so we'll just stick with that one.
Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match, so fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are going to talk about the road ahead and kind of what we know about Austin FC and what we don't know about Austin FC after these first 9 games. But first, let's preview the match against the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, so first of all, this one... Well, what? Go ahead. This is going to be on the...
What do we know about the Galaxy, Jeremiah?
Oh, what do we know about the Galaxy? Okay, 2023, they were 4th in the West, made it to the conference finals and lost to LAFC. In and out, Tyler Boyd out, Chicharito out, Douglas Costa out, probably an upgrade.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, with the guys they brought in, absolutely an upgrade.
For sure. Yeah. And then I found this great quote that said that LA had finally found a scouting department to recruit players instead of a Rolodex to make signings. And I think you can see that from Joseph Paintsil and Gabriel Peck in. Dynamic attack right now. First of the West, leading the league in goals per game. They've got one fewer goal than Miami in one fewer match, and won a chaotic match over the San Jose Earthquakes on Sunday night. So definitely not an easy road for Austin against LA. The thing I was going to say is like 12:45 seems like a really early time to watch a game for some reason. It feels like I'm getting breakfast soccer this weekend.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, it's not too hot yet, so I'm not mad about it. But if they throw us, I haven't looked ahead too far, but if they throw us one of those 2 p.m.s in August, I'm not going to be as happy about it.
For sure. So what do you think? What's the Austin's opportunity to win here? How do you set up? We kind of touched a little bit on the fact that LA is terrible defensively. Obviously, really good attack. I mean, it's amazing just the attacking players, like the guys that they bring on. And just like how dangerous the whole front 5 or whatever is at
you didn't even
point during the game.
Ricky Puig, who's been there already, so he's not a new player, but he still looks like one of the best players in the league, attacking anyway. And then Paintsil looks like an absolute menace. Peck came in a little bit later. He had a bit slower of a start, but still looks like a really good player. And they've got Dejan Joveljic, who was Chicharito's understudy last year. I think he's got 6 goals already this year. So just a super strong.
He's leading my Golden Boot team. He for sure has 6 goals.
Yeah, and then like guys in the other guys on their team, like Mark Delgado, Gaston Brugman, like these are guys who are like afterthoughts in mentioning their best attacking players. I would trade most of our team for those 2 guys. And so like they're really stacked going forward. Like you said, they're very weak defensively, both in open play and then also in set pieces. They've given up quite a few goals in set pieces. So Austin, looking at this game, I think the best hope is that it looks like one of those crazy San Jose games where maybe we win 4-3. Like, I don't know if there's another way to do it. And I'm curious to see how Austin approaches it. Like, will they try to go toe-to-toe and make it a 4-3 game? Or will they try to bunker and and just play super defensively and try to not give up a goal, and then maybe they can steal one on a set piece or something. Like, it seems like Josh Wolf wouldn't do that at home. But I could also see how one might think that is just as good of a strategy as trying to get into a shootout with the Galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence we have of a game like that is when Austin played at San Jose at home. Josh Wolf said Austin didn't want to get in a horse race. Then Austin did.
Yeah.
It ended up winning it, but that doesn't seem to be his natural preference. And a guy you didn't even mention because he's not playing a ton is Diego Fagundez.
That's right.
Who, for the first 2.5 years of Austin's existence, was one of Austin's better attacking players. Now, I think he played 25 minutes in the last game. So be interesting to see him back in Austin.
Yeah, he's pretty much super sub status for them right now. With the guys they brought in, like, it's no slight to Fagundez. These guys are just like top 10 talents in the league. Like, if he's gonna be behind those guys. I was talking to some friends about this the other night. What is your, like, going into this game as a current or at least former fan of Diego Fagundez? What is your attitude towards Diego Fagundez during a game against Austin FC?
He's just a guy. I think I'm that way with everybody that was a former player. I'm not like mad at him for being gone or anything, but I don't think I'm not ever going to get positioned to like secretly pull for a guy to do well against us if he's not an Austin player.
Yeah, that's where I sit too. I wish him the best as long as it doesn't negatively affect Austin. But I know for a fact that there are people in the Austin FC fandom who, like, will be cheering for him to score against us because of bitterness of him being traded or whatever. And I think that sucks. Like, I think that absolutely sucks eggs. Like, yeah, be a fan of the guy, but if you want him to beat your own team, what's the point of any of this?
I'm trying to think of any player in any sport that I've ever felt like that I wanted to do good against a team that I pulled for. And nothing comes to mind among any of my favorite players for anybody. So yeah, that's not the belief I have about it. Well, I was trying to find like things to be excited about in this match. And I mentioned that, like, I was like, well, they had a red card. Like, who's going to be missing? But that's Eric Zavaleta, who got that in like 7-8 minutes of play. So doesn't hurt him.
The backup center back got a red card in 9 minutes the other night. So, I mean, they'll be down a sub, and their two center backs are quite elderly gentlemen. I think 37 is Caceres, and then 35 is Maya Yoshida. So they're guys that will probably need subs at times during the season and may not have the luxury this time. So I guess we'll take that advantage, if we can call that an advantage. But yeah, what else do you see in this game?
I think we've got to cover it all. I think Austin has to play this game to win, particularly at home. I don't know if there's any other way that Austin manages to pull this out other than to just give it all they've got. Be willing to make some big subs early to change things up if it doesn't work out, and just got to go for it. Play with courage, right? Wait, was that a Alex Ring thing from 2022 or something that he would talk a lot about the way that they played? I think it's what we need from him.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good take, because you could go in and bunker, but I think chances are this Galaxy team scores on you anyway. I don't think they'll care what you're doing defensively. They're probably going to score some goals. And so, yeah, play with courage. Let's get out there, go toe-to-toe with them. Maybe we lose, but let's lose 4-3 instead of 3-0.
Totally. Well, do you want to talk about sort of what we learned so far, or do you want to do a little bit of a preview about the road ahead next? Dealer's choice. You decide. Okay. Well, I've got the future schedule pulled up, so we'll go that way.
Okay.
We'll kind of quickly cover May, and we touched on this, but like May is a super heavy month. Austin has 6 matches in May, and but it starts off with a bang. So after playing Houston, who was third in the West this week, then playing LA, who's first. Wait, LA's second. No, they're first again. Then the Vancouver, who's also in the top 3, is the next match. Then there's a week off before Dallas, which is Dallas. That's maybe an okay match. And then we do get into the grind of multiple games in multiple weeks. We have Dallas away on the 11th, then Austin home on the 15th. Then that's a Wednesday. Then Saturday, Austin against Sporting. The next Saturday, San Jose, and then the next Wednesday, Portland. So like Austin's going to have to be as healthy as can possibly be, and that's a really difficult stretch for a team that's not very deep. Like what do you have out of those 6 games? Like how many points should we hope to pick up?
Well, I mean, we've got 3 on the road, but 2 of them are against 2 of the worst teams in the West, in Dallas and San Jose. So there's opportunities there. Houston's not going to be an easy one. They're already a sturdy team with Hector Herrera coming back into health. I mean,
I read all this backwards, didn't I, too? Because I'm an American sports fan.
no, I don't think you did.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe I didn't then.
Maybe I wasn't listening, but I think you read them, right?
Okay, go ahead.
I don't like. Yeah, what do you think is a good points total? So out of 6 games, like, especially on the road games, like if you can get above a point per game on the road, that's solid. We want more than that at home, of course. So out of 6, I mean,
8 seems like it would be good.
8 or 9 would be good, especially for a team who's kind of just like holding on for dear life until the summer. I think 8 would be okay.
And it gets you a lot closer to the summer window, but it's not going to be an easy stretch. I think we'll know a lot about this team after this section of the schedule is over.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they come thick and fast. Luckily, Austin is about as healthy as they've been this year right now. You would guess Väisänen will become available during this stretch at some point. Hopefully, Owen Wolf is not out for too long. CJ Fodrey had a good kind of confidence building game for the first team. Hopefully, Rigoni has some confidence here. But yeah, it could go either way. I mean, we could go on one of that 2022 road run where they just kept winning games they weren't supposed to, or I could see us losing one and getting speed bagged the rest of them where they just kind of fall apart. So hopefully it's not the latter.
Yeah, this seems like a very a momentum stretch either way. So hopefully Austin will keep it up. So that's that run of 6. So let's kind of talk through what do we know or not know 9 games into the season. The context for this is the trade deadline / transfer window closes today. When the show comes out on April 23rd.
Yeah.
Just reading The Athletic. None of the Tom Bogert had like, here's 10 or 12 moves that seem to be in play, and none of them mentioned Austin. Like, there's no smoke. There's no credible rumors from. There's not even any uncredible rumors from anywhere at this point. So, like, I expect that this is what we got until the summer.
Bogert said that just the market in general has been very quiet right now, so he's not expecting a ton of moves. Period. And of the ones he mentioned, Austin was nowhere to be found.
Yeah, right. And the secondary window opens in July, so this is going to be Austin's club for a while. So what do you feel like you know about Austin FC?
I
9
think
games in.
One of the most encouraging things from the season that we now know is that Sebastian Driussi can still be a difference maker in this league. In the first 2 games that he came back and started and was healthy, we won those 2 games. And Mike Cragnola, I'm going to throw in one of his takes here in a second as well, but he was sending me some stats for like when Driussi's on the field versus when he's not on the field, and all of the important stats are higher when Driussi's on the field. It's a small sample size, but I think that proves out just from the eyeball test as well that he is still a difference maker. He can still be a game changer in this league. I'll say the caveat there is that he does still need support. And I'm not so sure. If we want to transition to a thing we don't know, is I don't know if this Austin FC squad will be able to provide Driussi with the support that he needs to be a game changer consistently.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And I would say one thing that to date, we had talked about breakout players of the year and where that might come from. And I would say Austin FC's difference maker is that secondary person is not on the roster right now, is a thing that I feel like I know. Like, Biro is the closest thing to somebody being encouraging about outperforming expectations, but like Danny hasn't made the step up that we hoped he might so far. Same about Owen Wolf. There's just like not a lot of Beater's not Beater. Obrion's like up and down. Diego Rubio hasn't captured that form he had a couple years ago. So I just think like the difference maker on this roster for Austin to make a long run is not on the team right now.
Yeah, totally agree. What's one thing you know, Jeremiah?
Well, that was my one thing I know is that the difference maker's not on the roster right now. I think I was going to say one thing I don't know is how this team's depth, I guess I would say. Like I was really worried about this team's depth going into the year. And it seems like there's not like a lot of high-end delivery. Like all the pieces that Burrell's put together have been good enough that I don't feel like Austin's ever going to be in a spot where we're playing like Alex Ring at center back or somebody totally out of position. So I don't know how deep this team is, but it's not as bad as I thought they were going to be going into this season.
Yeah, that was one of my. Listeners, you can probably tell this by now. We did not share these with each other before we started recording, but I had a similar one. And it was specifically on the center backs that I know that this is the strongest center back group that Austin has ever had in their existence. And so, I think there's questions about how good that depth actually is and how good the depth is across the rest of the field. But at that one position, I feel fairly comfortable with that. And we don't need to be actively trying to make moves at that spot right now.
So you want to throw something else in for Mike now?
Yeah. So I threw this to Mike to just diversify the opinions here a little bit. He said that one thing we know is this team has a different bite to it than 2023 squad in regards to mentality, physicality, and belief. And so he threw in some stats to back up this notion. So this is stats per match versus the entirety of the 2023 season. And so compared to 2023 per match, we're up 0.6 yellow cards per match. We're up 3.3 fouls committed per match. We're up almost 4 fouls drawn per match. And then in goals, if we're looking at goals scored after the 85th minute and goals given up after the 85th minute, this year we've scored 3 and have given up 2. And then in all of 2023, we scored 9 and gave up 13. And so small sample size, but I think the delta is big enough there to say this probably means a little bit of something as far as the fight that's in this team, the willingness to kind of clamp down and try to shut a game down defensively at the end of a game. I know it's not always fun to watch, but it's good to see that the players believe that they can do it and then see them go out and put the fight in to try to get that result sometimes.
Yeah, and who do you think the big contributors to that have been? Is it an overall team effort? Or is there anybody that's specifically I guess none of the offseason acquisitions really added a ton of that. Rubio maybe.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
Seems to be that kind of guy, but it seems to be collective effort.
It's this is one of those things. It's hard to know from the outside, what changed or what's different. I think at least a part of it is just tactical changes. And we've seen Wolf be willing to, okay, we're up at this point. We're throwing on, and this happened before the goal the other night, but we're going to throw on Valencia in the 84th minute and swap Danny out, where it seemed like there was a stretch where he just wasn't making changes like that. He never shut it down defensively. I know he's received criticism for trying to do that too early sometimes, either fairly or unfairly, but sometimes that's the right move, right? And it seems like that's a thing that's crossing his mind this season.
Yeah, and I think that was the criticism in the past. The substitutions they've been all like for like, and there's changes that are coming now with that. And I'll go with another thing I don't know, and that is what to expect out of the summer. I would have loved to have heard some more high profile player rumors that Austin was connected to, or some leaks from somewhere, or Burrell's been really, really quiet. And maybe that's just his way and different from leaky regimes of the past. But the summer feels like very much an unknown to me about whether Austin, maybe it depends upon the results over the next couple months, but whether Austin makes a significant push in the summer or waits until the winter when a bunch of flexibility opens up in terms of salaries and roster positions.
Yeah, I think this goes back to what we talked about last week. Is like we know that there's some moves coming, right? Like Mikael Dessler has been all but it's like Bogart official, and so we're pretty sure that one's happening. But like, how many other moves is going to be one other like supplemental spot, or is we're going to like buy down Rigoni and make a big DP thing? Like, who knows? I have no clue what that's going to look like. So, um, I mean, just for our sanity and entertainment's sake, I hope it's
Let's hope so. Yeah.
that they go crazy. But yeah, there's a strong possibility that might not happen. Um, I think that another thing that we still don't know is who the coach is going to be at the end of the season. The wolf out cries were as loud as ever 2 weeks ago. I think a win is always going to dampen that a little bit. But like we said, there's a rough stretch coming with a lot of games, and I think those sentiments are fairly mercurial and can drop pretty low pretty quickly if there's a stretch of bad performances.
Yeah, and I know, regardless of what side of this argument you were on going in, that there's nothing that's happened this season so far to persuade anybody with a strong opinion either way. Like if you thought if you think Josh Wolf's the guy, like then Austin being an 8 with summer reinforcements coming and like just like 3 points out of second or something is a good place to be. And if you're a Wolf out, like the fact that you get sort of a fluke goal and a negative performance against Houston that keeps Austin from being an 11th or 12th or whatever is not a convincing reason to believe that he is the guy. So I think I don't think that anything has happened so far during the season is going to change anybody's mind.
Yeah, totally agree. And like, I don't think like how many Wolf like straight up Wolf in people do you think there actually are?
Oh, I don't know because they only show up online after a win, and it seems to be mostly to troll the Wolf out,
right?
Mostly trolls, right? Yeah. Either way, that's fair. That's fair.
I've seen very, very few like earnest calls for like, I think Josh Wolf is a great coach.
Other than I'd say a lot of my friends who are casuals who are have a lot more familiarity with like American sports, where you're an expansion team and you're expected to stink for like 5 years.
Yeah, okay.
And you give everybody like you give a coach a lot of bandwidth. The fact that your average soccer coach lasts, I don't know, 2.5 years or whatever, that's a very foreign concept. I think a lot of people who are fans of the sport or fans of sports overall, but aren't soccer fans that are coming new to this game, those are the people I hear from that are that don't understand the calls for Wolf being gone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As a Wolf agnostic, I think what your point still proves true that good enough is good enough, right? Like if they can stay kind of around the playoff line, I think my assumption is that they don't want to pay him out at this moment, and they don't think the roster is that good anyway. If they can stay hovering around the playoff line for until the summer and then get reinforcements, or until the end of the season, I don't think he's going anywhere. But if they drop to the bottom of the table and look like they did in that stretch of 2 or 3 games where we looked like absolute garbage, like I think it could swing the other direction and really put some pressure on the front office. I mean, again, for our sanity and entertainment's sake, I don't want that to happen. I think maybe there's some people who want Wolf gone enough that they would take that sacrifice. I don't want that to happen, but I think if they can stay above a certain threshold, that he's probably not going anywhere.
I think it's probably true. Like nothing he's going to do is to change my mind to think he's the guy, but I'm still always going to want this team to win. Like, I mean, I'd be happy. Hey, we can win the MLS Cup and I'll be totally wrong, right? Like that would be absolutely fine with me. Always had that in mind. So is there anything else that you like a burning take that you wanted to have before we maybe just go ahead and wrap it up?
Well, so I asked my wife about this question to see if she had any thoughts about what we do or don't know about this team. And what she said didn't quite fit into the segment, but I thought it was a really good take.
Okay.
And her take was that looking across the short history of Austin FC, that the team in 2022 that was so good, and last year's team and this year's team, like, even though the results were a lot different, that this team is not that different. Like, that was, I think, like a take that we kind of, Austin fans, took offense to during 2022. They're like, oh, this team's not actually that good. But if you look at that team and then look at this year's team, and let's say you add a white hot Diego Fagundes into this team this year, we're probably significantly better, right?
Yeah. I mean, at this point in the season, you just need like one draw or loss to turn into a win, and you would definitely get that from a guy that's performing at the level that he was at, for sure.
But I just thought it's an astute take to say, like, yeah, the margins are small in this league, and like the swings can be drastic because of that. If you don't get better from one year to the next, and the other 5 teams who are within 3 points of you in the table do, that could drop you far. And then
affects you.
Take a year like 2023 with all the injuries and having to play Alex Ring at center back and everything else that went on. Like, yeah, it's easy to see how that big swing happens.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have.
What else we got? Is that everything?
I think that's it. I think we've talked about everything we need to talk about. One of the things that I thought would be a story for this week, we'll mention it, is the on-field rules will be enforced for the first time this past week. These being off-field treatment rule, which means, like, I think if you're undergoing treatment, you have to leave the field for a certain amount of time. Time substitution, you have to, so the subs can't take too long, and then the in-stadium VAR announcements. All 3 were intended to increase efficiency. I don't believe any of them came into play in the Austin game, and maybe it was just because like people weren't rolling around to need that to come into play. But expect some changes going forward.
I think the time wasting one came into play in the Austin game. I think there would have been some Austin players laying on the ground and rolling around late in that game, and
once we got the lead.
Or even like after the 70th, when we kind of like changed the defensive approach, I think from that point on, Austin would have wasted more time and weren't allowed to, which in that very moment, maybe my opinion is a little different. But overall, I think it's good for the game. And then I did see in the LA Galaxy match that they got one of those VAR calls, and it's really strange and like uncomfortably reminiscent of NFL for me for some reason. But I think overall it's probably a good thing, and so I'm interested to see how these go. But I'm pretty positive on them so far.
Yeah, anything that brings more clarity, less time wasting is probably going to be good. I guess we'll just see the first time it really comes into play for Austin.
Yeah. All right. Before we finish, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the Patreon. I've got the new tiers up there, photos of all the stuff. So check that out and join, won't you? Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a review of the LA Galaxy match and a preview of the Vancouver Whitecaps match. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente
Oh my God.